However, after succumbing to a crippling gambling addiction, he turned to a life of crime. Throughout his crime career, Yoshie famously escaped from 4 different prisons, and I'm about to tell you about every single one of them. Yoshie was initially put behind bars in 1936 for a felony murder charge, a murder charge that is speculated to have been a false, forced confession from abusive prison guards. During this time in the early 1900s, Japanese prison was extremely harsh, and it was for that reason that people were almost left no other option than try to escape because the living conditions were simply so horrible. And Yoshie was no different. Not long after being locked up, Yoshie began studying the routines of the guards to have an understanding of their patterns so he could potentially plan an escape. And one day, while cleaning himself in the bathhouse, he found the perfect tool to escape. He took one of the metal bands off of a wash bucket in the bathhouse and brought it back to his cell, where he was able to fashion this thin, flimsy piece of metal into a makeshift lockpick. And he used this lockpick to escape. He first waited for the guards to pass by his cell, and then he put pieces of wood underneath a blanket on his bed to make it appear that he was in his cell. And then he began picking the lock directly on the front door of his cell, one of the most brazen escapes we've talked about so far in this video. After successfully picking the lock on his own cell, he was free from his cell, but still behind many other locked doors. And surprisingly, he was able to successfully lockpick through numerous other doors and successfully escape the prison and achieve freedom once again. But this is only his first escape of many, as 3 days after his initial escape, he was already back in police custody because he was found stealing supplies from a local hospital. Because of this escape and attempted theft, he was given another life sentence and transferred to a different prison. During World War II in 1942, Yoshie was actually transferred to another prison, known as Akita Prison, where he found himself in harsher conditions. And the guards at this prison were very privy to his escape attempts, and they wanted to make sure that they made an example out of Yoshie. And these solitary confinement rooms were literally designed for escape artists. They had smooth copper walls, the ceiling was extremely high, and the only way in and out was the front door, besides a skylight that was at the very top of the very high ceiling, which obviously nobody could reach. Well, almost anybody couldn't reach. Because on June 15th, in solitary confinement, Yoshie decided to escape once again. When I say Yoshie was a master escape artist, I mean it. And he was able to escape this unescapable room. And how he did it was he first got out of his handcuffs. Oh yeah, he was literally kept in handcuffs 24/7 in this new prison just because they wanted to make extra sure he would not escape. But obviously that didn't stop him. He escaped these handcuffs by finding a piece of wire once again in this solitary confinement. Where it came from, we don't know. But regardless, he used it to unpick his handcuffs. At this point, his hands were free, and he began to use his bare palms and feet to scale the sides of this extremely tall prison cell. Not only was Yoshie a master lockpicker, but he was also a very talented climber, and this came in handy here.